Despite the fact that we've reached over 12 kilometers depth instead of 15 kilometers that was initially planned, the Kola Superdeep project proved to be more than successful from the scientific standpoint. Researchers received valuable information every few meters of drilling. We were quite glad to discover a new ore horizon, such as fairly shallow industrial deposits of copper-nickel ore at a depth of about 1.6 kilometers. An even more interesting find was a geochemical anomaly, a rock layer with a high gold content of up to 1 gram per ton. The only thing is, this layer was discovered as deep as 9.5 kilometers, where it is unprofitable to extract the valuable metal. But this still had scientific value. In addition to practical data on subsoil useful for industrial applications, scientists received groundbreaking information on the real structure of the Earth's crust. The geological profile forecast of the well didn't prove to be true. The structure they expected to see for the first 5 kilometers turned out to stretch for 7 kilometers and was quite surprisingly followed by some low-density rocks. The basalts predicted to lie at a depth of 7 kilometers weren't found at all, even when they reached 12 kilometers depth. The deep seismic sounding of the site was done before performing the work. Scientists believed that there was a zone in which granites transitioned into a more durable basalt layer, where they registered the greatest reflection. In reality, it turned out that less hard and dense fissured rocks, namely Archean gneisses, were lying there. That is, everything we thought to be true about those depths was proven wrong. This revelation took scientists by surprise. No one could have predicted this. But this new information has shown the data from other deep geophysical studies in a different light. The researchers didn't always succeed in extracting rock samples at great depths. Take, for example, the core column we've mentioned earlier. When raised to the surface from a great depth, even such an exceptionally hard material as granite crumbled due to the pressure drop. Scientists often need to deliberately slow down the lifting of the core, even taking a few days in order to preserve the sample in its original form. Scientists were even more surprised by the depth's temperature and how it changed as they moved deeper. At first, the temperature was expected to increase by about 11 degrees per kilometer. However, at a depth of 2.2 to 7.5 kilometers, this figure has already jumped to 24 degrees per kilometer. It turned out that the temperature was about 70 degrees Celsius at 5 kilometers depth and climbed to 220 degrees when they reached the 12-kilometer mark. This is much higher than was initially predicted by scientists. Quite amazingly, 14 types of fossilized microorganisms were found at the depths that were believed to have no organic matter, and those deep layers were over 2.8 billion years old. At even greater depths, where there are no sedimentary rocks, the researchers found a huge concentration of methane. And all of this is just the part that the general public can easily understand about all the amazing discoveries made at the Kola Superdeep. Humanity was humbled once again about how little we know about our own planet. The Kola Superdeep also holds another record for the number of hoaxes. The most popular legend says that having reached a certain depth, the microphones on the drilling module recorded eerie, non-technogenic sounds. A recording of these sounds was even shared on the internet. People immediately developed a conspiracy theory around this event, saying, "Scientists drilled a well right into hell." Once again, we'll debunk this myth for those who hear the story for the first time. Firstly, there were no microphones on the drilling equipment at the Kola Superdeep. There were sensors that recorded environmental fluctuations, but this had nothing to do with the sound recording, at least in the common sense of the word. Secondly, one of the Finnish newspapers became the primary source of the urban legend about the hellish drilling rig, which coincidentally released the publication on April Fool's Day, April 1st. However, there were some strange incidents at the Kola Superdeep, which might have indeed inspired some hoax makers. One of these events was a major accident that happened under strange circumstances. The director of the Kola Superdeep Research and Production Center, academician David Guberman, gave the best account of what happened in his interview. When asked about this mysterious story at UNESCO, I didn't know what to say. On the one hand, it's complete BS. On the other hand, as an honest scientist, I couldn't say that I know exactly what happened here. A very strange noise was recorded, followed by an explosion. A few days later, nothing of the kind was found at the same depth. So after all, things at the Kola Superdeep are not as simple as they seem to be. Who knows? In 1995, the project was closed and the well itself was sealed. Perhaps the next generation of scientists following Guberman's steps will see for themselves what happened there. In 1974, American researchers almost managed to reach a drilling depth of 10,000 meters. An ultra-deep well created in the Anadarko oil and gas basin in Oklahoma reached 9,583 meters, breaking all records known at that time. Moreover, this was incredibly fast. It took just 502 days for the team to reach this mark. The work cost Lone Star $15 million, a huge figure at that time. Unfortunately, Bertha Rogers turned out to be a complete failure. The fact is that it initially pursued a commercial goal, as the team was looking for oil. But instead of oil, the drilling turbine plunged into a whole underground sea of molten sulfur. This reminded many people of the underworld. Due to its futility, the project was quickly closed, and this was the end of the story. Something much more interesting happened a decade later in the other part of the globe.
I stand sentinel.
The Swedish project of a 7-kilometer exploration well emerged thanks to an interesting alternative theory on the origin of fossil hydrocarbons. In the 1980s, the scientific community hypothesized that oil and gas were formed not from perennial layers of dead planets, but from the so-called mantle fluids. These are hot gases and liquid mixtures saturated with hydrocarbons, which are formed in the mantle and seep into the Earth's crust on their way up. This bold assumption had certain implications. Since hydrocarbons are formed in this way, oil and gas reserves can be contained not only in sedimentary, but also in volcanic and metamorphic rocks. The theory was not only of scientific, but also commercial interest, and many people wanted to test it. The project was quickly funded, and Sweden decided to conduct a large-scale experiment. Scientists chose the Siljan ring crater with a diameter of 52 kilometers for drilling. According to geophysical data, calcined granites lay at a depth of 500 to 600 meters, which could cover the underlying hydrocarbon reservoir. Scientists have measured gravitational deviations with great precision. This information is highly valuable in understanding the composition and density of rocks occurring in the depths. The results indicated the presence of highly porous rocks at a depth of 5 kilometers, which presumably contained oil and gas. The drilling results themselves came as a huge disappointment for scientists and investors who invested $60 million in this project. The strata they worked on didn't contain commercial reserves of hydrocarbons, but only sporadic oil and gas deposits of a pronounced biological origin. In 1990, the project was closed.
Defend with me.
Still, this well has puzzled many researchers and was at first a source of disappointment for many of them. But the following happened. On July 11th, 1987, while fishing for a lost line, a sticky, black, mineralized material was found on special fishing tools. When the drill pipe was brought to the surface, it was found that the inside of the lower section was filled with about 60 kilograms of a strange, black, jelly-like substance resembling asphaltene. It was mined at a depth of 5,945 meters. A preliminary analysis of the black material established that the main component was magnetite, with an admixture of paraffinic hydrocarbons. There have also been found biomarkers closely resembling those previously found in the vicinity of the Siljan Ring crater. The researchers suggested that the black material is a product of vital activity of an underground population of bacteria that use non-biological hydrocarbons migrating from the Earth's mantle in their life cycle. The alleged discovery has been widely reported in popular scientific literature as proof of the mantle methane hypothesis. This was going to be a worldwide sensation. But here, the skeptics of the alternative theory raised their voices. The answers came from a complex combination of accurate calculations, careful analysis, scientific intuition, and the tenacious mind of the project participants. The scientists were able to find a connection between the unique fossil substance and regular technological processes at the oil rig. A week before the black substance was discovered, a special mixture of commercial soda, polymers, and biodegradable lubricants was applied to the drill bit. This was necessary to free the drill string, which was stuck at a depth of 5,945 meters. The technical mixture circulated for a day following these procedures, and after that, the drill pipe became stuck. So, judging by the chemical and isotopic characteristics of the black mass, it followed that this jelly-like material was formed as a result of structural changes in the previously mentioned biodegradable non-toxic lubricants. They were affected by caustic soda, diesel fuel, and hydrocarbon inclusions from local lake water. As a result, the extreme conditions of depth, pressure, huge mechanical loads, and high temperature turned a mixture of quite ordinary materials into something completely unusual. Perhaps similar extreme depth and pressure conditions have caused many shipwrecks. There's one place in the oceans that has particularly sinister fame. In the distant 15th century, Christopher Columbus's expedition faced something that made the whole team panic. The Great Discoverer's Ship Journal contains accounts of the compass needle going haywire, huge spurts of flame appearing out of nowhere, and the sea giving off a strange glow. Many years later, this dead place proved once again how sinister it is. Ships disappear without a trace here. Sometimes they are found, drifting, empty, and completely desolate. But more often than not, we don't even find wrecks. But it's not only the ships that go missing. Planes disappear too. Even entire squadrons of military aircraft. Facts and rumors about these incredible phenomena have quickly spread around the globe. And soon, this region of the Atlantic became known as something sinister, and it continues to uphold its eerie reputation, even today. You've already guessed it. This is the Bermuda Triangle. What kind of supernatural power is hidden under its waters? And what does science say about all this? The Bermuda Triangle. For starters, let's refresh the most notable incidents that brought the Bermuda Triangle its loud and sad fame. The training sailing ship HMS Atalanta left the Royal Navy dockyard in Bermuda for Falmouth, England on January 31st, 1880. The ship didn't reach the British Isles. It hasn't even left Bermuda. It simply disappeared without a trace. It was assumed that the ship sank after encountering a severe storm on its route, and that the crew wasn't experienced enough to handle the situation. At that time, the whole world was eager to learn about the ship's fate. When the ship went missing, the Admiralty received over 150 telegrams and 200 personal calls from concerned friends and relatives. The missing ship made headlines, and the public demanded an explanation. People came up with all kinds of plausible theories, but neither the wreckage nor the bodies of the dead, let alone survivors, were found. HMS Atalanta's disappearance has remained a mystery. The coal carrier Cyclops, loaded with manganese ore, left the island of Barbados on March 4th, 1918. A few days later, it disappeared without a trace, along with a 309-people crew. This incident is responsible for the highest number of non-battle casualties in U.S. Navy history. There are many hypotheses regarding the loss of the USS Cyclops. Some people blame a strong storm. Others blame the overload and the structural damages caused by cargo. And others even suggest an attack by the Imperial German Navy. But the fact remains, the ship disappeared without a trace in the ocean area that later became known as the Bermuda Triangle. This is a 5-masted commercial schooner, Carroll A. Deering, built in 1919. On January 31st, 1921, it was discovered by the Coast Guard on Diamond Shoals near Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. The ship ran aground, and the Coast Guard was ready to rescue people in trouble. But it turned out that there was no one to save. The ship was empty. No crew, no passengers. Unfortunately, further search efforts for the missing people didn't yield any results. As usual, there are multiple hypotheses explaining this incident, from a pirate attack to the inexplicable disappearance staged by the team itself. Flight 19. This was one of the most famous and sensational incidents, and it happened not with a ship, but with a whole group of aircraft, which inspired researchers to come up with more and more paranormal explanations of the Bermuda Triangle. Flight 19 was a training flight for 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers. According to the squadron's flight plan, they had to go 141 miles east of Fort Lauderdale, then 73 miles north, and then back for another 140 miles to complete the training. The aircraft never returned to base. The entire squadron disappeared over the Atlantic on December 5, 1945. Moreover, a further rescue expedition with PNM Mariner seaplanes also ended up in disaster and casualties. One of the mariners also disappeared in the same area, along with a crew of 13. Flight 19 was just the first link in a chain of similar aircraft incidents. In the future, aircraft continued to disappear in this area. On January 30th, 1948, an Avro Tudor 4 passenger plane, also known as Star Tiger, disappeared when flying from the Azores to Bermuda. Almost 1 year later, on January 17, 1949, another plane disappeared when flying from Bermuda to Kingston, Jamaica. And this also was an Avro Tudor 4, which even had a similar name, Star Ariel. It was as if the devilish triangle favored these particular models. On December 28, 1948, Douglas DC-3 NC-16002 went missing on a flight from San Juan, Puerto Rico to Miami. No trace of the aircraft or 32 people on board was found. The Civil Aviation Board's investigation found that there was not enough information to determine why it disappeared. On September 26, 1955, a pleasure yacht, Connemara 4, was found adrift in the Atlantic, south of Bermuda. The ship was empty, with no crew or passengers. The people were never found. It seemed strange that the yacht was intact, and it's unlikely that the crew would have voluntarily left it without a clear threat of drowning. And planes again. On August 28, 1963, a pair of U.S. Air Force KC-135 Stratotankers collided and crashed into the Atlantic 300 miles, 480 kilometers west of Bermuda. There are no more mysteries here. Well, they collided. Such things happen. But again, why in the Bermuda Triangle of all places? One can't help but think that things are not as easy to explain as they might seem. Judging by the dates, you might think that all this happened a long time ago, but that's not the case. The next incident happened just recently. The 29-foot Mako Cuddy cabin with 20 passengers on board was reported missing a day after it was due to arrive in Lake Worth after crossing the Gulf Stream from the Bahamas. It was last seen on December 28, 2020. Looking for the ship or passengers yielded absolutely no results. There were no records of any distress signal. Search efforts involving aircraft and boats lasted 84 hours and covered an area of 17,000 square miles, which is about twice the size of the state of Massachusetts, but to no avail. These are just a few examples. In total, there are dozens of recorded strange incidents that happened in the Bermuda Triangle area. People have come up with all sorts of theories, bold assumptions, and skeptical revelations concerning the Bermuda Triangle and its strange events. And of course, a lot of research has been done in this field. You'll probably be surprised to hear that for all its mystery, the Triangle area is one of the most explored places in the oceans. But it's not only because of the mysterious disappearances of ships and airplanes. Many expeditions were sent to the area of the Bermuda Triangle to study the Gulf Stream, the ocean's influence on the weather, the seabed and its minerals, as well as the geological structure of the Earth's crust deep under the ocean floor. Those who consider the Bermuda Triangle to be a true death trap are right, at least from one perspective. This is indeed an extremely complex ocean region. Huge shoaliness and deep water depressions, a complex system of sea currents, and intricate atmospheric circulation all coexist in this region. And now you'll learn all about it. Let's start from the very seabed. The bottom configuration in this ocean region is well studied. It's even known what lies several kilometers under the seabed. On the Florida Shelf, in the Bahamas and Bermuda region, a lot of drilling and geophysical research was performed. There is also an amazing variety of seabed landforms in the Bermuda Triangle, which is hardly found anywhere else on the planet. There is a shelf with shallow banks, a continental slope, marginal and median plateaus, deep straits, abyssal plains, and deep sea trenches. This wide variety is very rare to come by in such a relatively small ocean area. Scientists conducted a planimetry of a large-scale morphological map of the seabed and established that the Bermuda Triangle area can be arbitrarily divided into two parts: the southern and northern ones. The southern one includes the Florida Shelf, the Bahama Banks, the Straits, and the Puerto Rico Deep Sea Trench. In this part, the seabed's shape looks very striated. Extensive shoals alternate with straits and great ocean depths. The northern part of the triangle is more calm and has a relatively uniform bottom topography. The wide shelf turns into a spacious deep water plain. In its north and east, some seamounts and a rather large Bermuda Plateau arise. Seamounts? Now this is where it gets interesting. In fact, a mountain is too strong a word, but there are several groups of seamounts in the northern and eastern parts of the triangle. Some of them even have names, but most remain unnamed. The fact is that they're only 150 to 200 meters high. By surface standards, these are not even mountains, but hills. But for the seabed, these are quite remarkable formations. These small mountains in the area have a rather peculiar, almost regular conical shape. Lower cones of less than 100 meters are more numerous, and these are actually called underwater hills. Their round or elliptical shape is easy to notice when looking from above. The slopes of 10 to 30 degrees aren't that steep. The foot can range from several kilometers to several tens of kilometers in diameter. Seamounts and even slopes in this area have a regular shape, which is sometimes complicated by several terraced steps. In the first case, the mountains look just like cones. In the second one, they look like huge plinths with several smaller cones on top. Interestingly, there are much fewer seamounts in the Atlantic Ocean than in the Pacific. In fact, there are around 10,000 individual seamounts in the Pacific Ocean, while the Atlantic Ocean bed has only about 600. And the point is not that the Atlantic Ocean is smaller in size, but that the geology of the Pacific Ocean is more diverse. But in the Atlantic, there are also places with some unusual seabed shape. Perhaps it's not a coincidence that the most interesting configurations are found mostly in the Bermuda region. The islands that lent their name to the entire Bermuda Triangle are precisely the peaks of the largest seamounts rising from the Bermuda Plateau. Some rise from the bottom of the ocean on their own, and others form groups. The original material that formed the seamounts is basalt, but it's hard to see because the mountains are covered with limestone deposits. The limestone platform that forms the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle is a unique geological formation. The limestone deposits here are almost 6 kilometers deep, and all this thick layer is the remains of ancient small creatures. This ocean area is also interesting because the northernmost coral reefs on the planet are found here. And for hundreds of millions of years, the natural conditions that we see here now remain virtually unchanged. In general, scientists haven't even found consensus on the very origin of Bermuda. In 2019, a large international group of geologists published an article in the Nature Journal showing that Bermuda was formed as a result of highly unusual volcano activity. Previously, scientists didn't study such a mechanism of volcanic activity, but it may have contributed to the formation of some other volcanic archipelagos of the world ocean. The fact is that volcanoes are most often formed at the divergent plate boundary. This is clearly visible on the mid-ocean ridges. It can also be found in subduction zones, such as near the coast of Japan, where one plate sinks under another. Alternatively, volcanoes emerge due to persistent vertical magma flows that rise from the mantle depths and gradually melt the lithospheric plate above. It is this process that gave rise to the Hawaiian Islands that continue to form even today. For many years, it was believed that the ancient, long-extinct volcanoes that once raised the Bermuda Islands from the bottom of the Sargasso Sea were triggered by the mantle plumes. Indeed, a stable plume was observed in this area. On the other hand, such a plume could leave a characteristic chain of islands, such as Hawaii. It emerges as a result of the slow crust movement over a stable vertical magma flow. Also, there's no volcanic activity in the area affected by this flow today. To sort out these inconsistencies, geologists conducted an additional analysis of an 800-meter core from Bermuda back in 1972. They detected a very unusual mineral composition, as well as lead isotopes and some other heavy elements. The research results gave rise to several hypotheses on the origin of Bermuda. According to the most plausible theory, the disruptions in magma flows lifted and mixed the matter fragments of ancient plates preserved in the mantle transition zone. This may seem unclear, but once you understand all this, you'll be surprised. Let's remember that the entire Atlantic Ocean emerged about 175 million years ago as a result of the split of the Pangaea supercontinent, which previously contained almost all of the planet's land. The plates that today form Africa, Europe, and the Americas parted, giving rise to an ocean between them. Numerous plate fragments plunged into the mantle under the ocean bed, sinking into the transition zone at a depth of about 400 to 600 kilometers. About 30 million years ago, mantle flow disturbances made several of this semi-molten debris float higher, while merging, mixing, and interacting with water. Such a process could create not only Bermuda with its unusual geology, but also some other volcanic islands in the oceans. Yep, the Bermuda Triangle was a very unusual place tens of millions of years before it became mainstream. But what rises above the water in the Bermuda Triangle has its opposite, and that's even more interesting. After all, there is nothing but the Puerto Rico Trench. The deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean, the Milwaukee Deep, lies in the Bermuda Triangle. The Puerto Rico Trench is 8,380 meters deep at this point. According to other estimates, even deeper. Perhaps a coincidence? It seems to be a little too much of a coincidence. However, the Puerto Rico Trench is also well studied. In fact, as much as modern technology allows. The 8 to 10 degree slope, located closer to the island of Puerto Rico, is a little steeper. The slope facing the ocean is more moderate and has only 3 to 5 degrees. The Puerto Rico Trench is medium-sized. Its length is 1,550 kilometers. To put this into perspective, the longest trench on Earth, the Peru-Chile, is 5,900 kilometers long, and the deepest one, the Mariana, is 2,550 kilometers long. But the Puerto Rico Trench is up to 120 kilometers wide, which is one of the widest ones on Earth. For example, the Marian Trench is twice as wide. The total area of the Puerto Rico Trench's bottom is 186,000 square meters. Science fiction writers often imagine that the deepest parts of the ocean hide mysterious forces and unknown creatures. The Puerto Rico Trench seems to inspire such ideas. However, nothing mysterious or supernatural can be found at its bottom. There are only silts, volcanic ash, and layers of fine-grained sands in some places. Special deep-sea organisms live in bottom sediments and above, such as sponges, holothurians, worms, and other living creatures. And of course, deep-sea fish in the water column. Well, after all, although extremely unusual, the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle still lacks anything completely mysterious. Perhaps we'll find something interesting in its very thickness. At first glance, the structure of the triangle bottom seems unremarkable. Here, one can mostly find regular sedimentary rocks such as limestones, sandstones, and clays. This layer's thickness ranges from 1 to 2 kilometers in the Bermuda Plateau area and up to 5 to 6 kilometers near the Bahama Banks. The average rate of sediment accumulation is approximately 6 millimeters per 150 years. That is, it's safe to say that little has changed in the Triangle seabed over the past 120 to 130 million years. But this is only at first glance. There's something in this area that haunts not only mystery seekers, but also quite famous researchers who are concerned about safe seafaring. We are literally talking about a time bomb. A real gas bomb we know almost nothing about, and where and when it will explode. Now this is where it gets really interesting. In the hopes of explaining some of the strange ship disappearances, scientists and enthusiasts are desperately trying to balance between bold hypotheses and a rigorous scientific approach that rules out hoaxes. Therefore, there aren't so many bold theories. One of them concerns eruptions of methane hydrate deposits, a special form of natural gas. The presence of large deposits of methane hydrates on the continental shelves has been scientifically proven. The only question is whether the rapidly released masses of these substances can sink a ship. some very serious experiments were performed to find it out. For example, a group of Australian researchers conducted a series of simulations. The results were actually promising. When experimenting with smaller ship models, artificial gas eruptions sank the models quite easily. This was due to a sharp decrease in the water density. It has been suggested that intermittent methane interruptions may create areas of foamy water that can't provide sufficient buoyancy for ships. Such an area formed around the ship could cause it to sink very quickly and unexpectedly. Hence the lack of distress signals. They simply couldn't be sent in time. The debris would then be quickly swept away and scattered by the Gulf Stream. Hence, the disappearances are very hard to trace. U.S. Geological Survey publications describe large subsea hydrate reserves around the world, including in the Blake Ridge region near the coast of the southeastern United States. Now, everything seems to add up. But according to the same geological survey, there have been no major gas hydrate emissions in the Bermuda Triangle Zone over the past 15,000 years. I don't want to talk about any conspiracies here. Moreover, there exist a lot of well-founded explanations debunking the mysterious nature of even the most high-profile disappearances. But mysteries attract inquisitive minds. No matter how overrated the Bermuda Triangle is, no matter how far-fetched its secrets are, it inspires the curiosity of whole generations. And it's in the pursuit of mystery that humanity often discovered the true nature of phenomena and quickly turned from fantasies to indisputable facts. A huge number of far-fetched fantasies and secrets surrounded the next construction. This is the only one of the 7 wonders of the world that has survived to this day. They call it the Great One, which seems quite fitting. The scale is truly breathtaking. It's 146 meters, 479 feet high. It consists of 2,300,000 stone blocks. Some of them weigh about 50 tons. The entire structure weighs about 6 million tons. It's like 16 Empire State Buildings combined. And all this was done by people who didn't know the wheel. For 38 centuries, it held the status of the tallest building on Earth. And it remains the most mysterious building, even now. There are so many mysteries, fantasies, and conjectures surrounding it, because it's very ancient. Even its inscriptions were deciphered almost by pure luck. Otherwise, there would be much more secrets and fantasies. This is the Pyramid of Cheops. It was built with amazing precision. The perimeter of its base, divided by twice its height, gives the number pi to the nearest thousandth. Try it yourself on a calculator. It's impressive. Definitely, this wasn't a coincidence, since the proportion would have been different if the ancient Egyptians had made the pyramid higher or wider, just a meter. And this was done by people so long ago that no one even heard of the village that would later become Rome. By the way, we greatly underestimate the pyramid's age due to our perception of the distant past. Take the last queen of Egypt, the legendary Cleopatra. She was born in 69 BC, that is, 2,090 years ago, or 2091, whatever. We involuntarily perceive her as the same age as the pyramids. She was the Queen of Egypt, after all. But the construction of the Great Pyramid ended around 2540 BC, and it started 20 years earlier. That is almost 2,500 years before Cleopatra was born. Just think about it. For Cleopatra, the Pyramid of Cheops was more ancient than Cleopatra herself for you and me. Doesn't this blow your mind? Therefore, we perceive many things about the Great Pyramid's internal structure as something bizarre and mysterious, precisely because we are so far from fully understanding how people of that era lived, thought, and what they were driven by. But somehow, we still need to satisfy our boundless curiosity. In this video, you'll find out what's inside and under the Egyptian pyramids. What unusual things were recently discovered there? Where are the priceless artifacts and the pharaoh's body? And so much more. What do the Egyptian pyramids hide inside and under them? How can you get inside the pyramid? Initially, there was only one entrance to the Great Pyramid, the one made by the builders. It's located on the north side, 7.9 meters, 25.92 feet east of the pyramid's center line. This distance is equal to 15 royal cubits. The Egyptian measurement system was based on the proportions of the human body. The cubit was the main measurement unit and was equal to the distance from the elbow to the fingertips. So the builders of the pyramids applied the common cubit, while the royal cubit was used to determine the size of the inner rooms with the pharaoh's coffin. But although this is the original entrance, another one is used more commonly, the so-called Robber's Tunnel. Such a strange name comes from the very nature of the passage. It was built no one knows when by robbers who ransacked the tombs for centuries. This happened thousands of years before Lara Croft. And scientists still haven't come to a consensus on when and who got so confused as to gouge a passage as long as 27 meters, 88.58 feet in solid masonry. The Robber's Tunnel ends with a junction. There is a passage from the original entrance from above that goes down, and an ascending passage going up. So let's start our creepy walk with the ascending passage. Why creepy? Because as soon as you go in the aisle, it feels quite unpleasant. And it's not about the curse of the pharaohs or other mysticism. It's just that the passage is narrow, dark, and stuffy. The air is stale and heavy. In general, it wouldn't appeal to impressionable people and those who have even the slightest claustrophobia issues. Another junction lies 39.3 meters, 128.94 feet away, and has a horizontal passage and the entrance to the Grand Gallery. Let's go ahead first. The atmosphere is the same, cramped, dark, stuffy, and gloomy. But something special waits for us in the end. The horizontal passage ends with the Queen's tomb. Yes, not only Pharaoh Khufu, but also his wife was buried in the pyramid. The Queen's chamber lies exactly in the middle between the pyramid's northern and southern sides. Its dimensions are 10 cubits, or 5.2 meters, 17.06 feet from north to south, and 11 cubits, or 5.8 meters, 19.03 feet from east to west. It has a gable roof, 6.3 meters, 20.67 feet high. At the east end of the chamber, there's a niche, 4.7 meters, 15.42 feet high. It was originally about a meter deep, but treasure hunters have significantly deepened it. in the hopes of finding something valuable. Unfortunately, if there was something valuable in the Queen's chamber, then it was stolen by robbers long before Herodotus, who was widely known as the father of history. It's easy to understand robbers. In those days, even the pyramid's look hinted at the innumerable treasures inside. Did you know that it didn't look even close to how it looks now? The entire surface was covered with a smooth layer of dense limestone. In some spots, you could still see its remains. And at the very top of each pyramid, there was a pyramidion, a large pyramid-shaped stone, possibly covered with gold. If there was gilding, then the pyramidion shone brightly in the sun's rays, crowning the snow-white pyramid and spreading the light of Pharaoh's greatness for tens of kilometers around. This splendor, even in our time, would have dazzled anyone with its magnificence and grandeur. No wonder it attracted the ancients so much. Let's return to the junction and go up the ascending passage again. In a few meters, it connects to the Grand Gallery. Here, you can finally feel lighter and breathe comfortably. Although the passage becomes slightly wider, it already has an impressive height of 8.6 meters, 28.22 feet. In the Grand Gallery, we'll have to go 46.68 meters, 153.15 feet up the slope. Walking all this distance and looking up, you can see the strangely shaped walls in the corridor. They seem to be tilted inward, so that at the ceiling, the Grand Gallery is only 1 meter wide. In fact, this didn't come from lack of consideration, but on the contrary, the utmost care during construction. Thus, ancient engineers meticulously calculated the shape and laying sequence, so that the pressure of a giant stone mass from above wouldn't break through the ceiling and block up the passage. The Grand Gallery ends with a small antechamber in front of the most important room, the Pharaoh's chamber. It was this place that caught the special attention of scientists and enthusiasts fascinated by the ancient Egyptian civilization. The King's Chamber is the topmost of the pyramid's 3 main chambers. It is completely clad in granite. Its dimensions are 10.5 meters from east to west and 5.2 meters from north to south. The ceiling is flat. The chamber, about 5.8 meters high, and is formed by 9 stone slabs, weighing in total about 400 tons. The walls are made up of 5 rows of granite blocks. There are no inscriptions, which is typical for the burial chambers of the 4th dynasty. The stones are matched with high precision. Facing surfaces are cleaned with varying degrees of thoroughness. The backsides of the blocks were only roughly hewn, as was common with Egyptian hardstone facade blocks. It was probably done to save effort and time. The only object in the king's chamber is a sarcophagus made from a single hollowed-out granite block. When it was rediscovered in the early Middle Ages, it was already broken and empty. All of its contents have been looted long ago. If there was any content at all. Hang on a second. What? Don't worry, there are no conspiracy theories. Herodotus also claimed that the Cheops pyramid was built in the pharaoh's honor, but he wasn't buried in it. There weren't found any funeral-themed images or inscriptions on the walls of his burial chamber, and in those days, making such inscriptions in a room where no one was buried was considered great blasphemy. Many modern scientists follow this theory, believing that there are still rooms in the Great Pyramid that haven't been discovered, and the pharaoh's body may rest in one of them, and along with it, the priceless artifacts of an unimaginably ancient and amazing civilization. And by the way, the latest research indicates that all this may turn out to be not far from reality after all. Later in this video, you'll find out what we are talking about. Despite slight frustration that naturally comes from seeing the gaping emptiness of the sarcophagus, very few people remain disappointed when they get into the pharaoh's tomb. Touching such an unimaginable antiquity, such an original and great civilization is bound to impress you. From the very top, we still have to go down to the very bottom. To do this, let's go back to the intersection and go further down the descending passage. Here, you'd have to go the longest distance of 72 meters, 236.22 feet. What makes it special is that most of the way passes not in the pyramid, but under it. The passage is carved into the limestone that served as the natural foundation for the Great Pyramid. What waits for us down there? There is another mystery, an unfinished chamber that is about 27 meters, 88.58 feet below the level of the pyramid's base. Dimensions are approximately 8.4 meters, 27.56 feet from north to south, and 14.1 meters, 46.26 feet from east to west. It is about 4 meters, 13.12 feet high. The mystery is that the chamber isn't small, and the passage is long. Thus, the builders required a huge amount of effort and time to construct. But in the end, the chamber wasn't finished. What could have gotten in the way, and what was the chamber for? There's no single answer to these questions in the scientific community, as this equation has too many unknowns. Many researchers stick to the simplest theories, completely devoid of mysticism or any pretentiousness. For example, prominent Egyptologist Chris Mountain told in an interview about his vision.
Do not let that happen again.
According to Mountain, at first, he thought that the chamber wasn't finished because it lost its purpose after the plan had changed.
Egyptian monuments were under construction for a very long time. And often what happened was you'd get the king suddenly die. Then it would be a new king, a new project, and they would either dismantle it or build it over. I suspect they were not as bothered by something not being finished,
said the researcher. Although the underground chamber is rightly considered one of the most mysterious places in the Great Pyramid, at least we can see and explore it. But the studies of the next few years, performed using the muon tomography method, literally shocked the scientific community. It turned out that inside the Pyramid of Cheops, there is at least one large void that we haven't known about all this time.
Your core is under attack.
In 2015, a high-tech and very promising Scan Pyramids project was launched. Scientists from universities of Nagoya, Paris, and Cairo were going to use special cosmic particle detectors to find anomalies inside the pyramid. You can loosely compare this method with X-rays. In the accessible spaces of the pyramid, scientists placed special, highly sensitive plates that registered massive particles called muons. These particles arrive directly from outer space and pierce the pyramid through, leaving a certain projection of the substance density on the detector plates. And so, in October 2017, the participants of the Scan Pyramids project announced a sensational discovery. They managed to find several previously unknown voids in the pyramid. At least one large cavity was clearly detectable. It lies directly above the Grand Gallery, is at least 30 meters long, and has the same width as the gallery. They even began to speculate that these are the real tombs of the pharaoh and his wife. Archaeologists and Egyptologists flatly refused the idea, accusing physicists of misinterpreting the data. The experiments were replicated many times on different equipment by different teams. The skeptics had to admit the Great Void undoubtedly exists. Unfortunately, 5 years have passed since then, with no further progress. Although back in 2017, this discovery seemed incredibly promising and exciting. Chris Naunton believes that much more can be found there than we know now, including the pharaoh's remains. Unfortunately, archaeologists cannot get inside. The fact is that any attempt to go through the pyramid can cause irreparable damage, and this, of course, will never be allowed by the Egyptian Ministry of Materials. More mysteries may lie not even in the Great Pyramid itself, but in its vicinity, and not on the surface, but deep under the desert sands.
There's my precious seed. Go get it, would you?
I make my exit.
The topic first received the spotlight in the 21st century. So in 2009, British explorer Andrew Collins said that he had found a whole lost underground world of the pharaohs that was never known before. That's it. No more, no less. He claimed that a huge system of caves, chambers, and tunnels was hidden under the pyramids of Giza. A whole underground complex inhabited by bats and poisonous spiders right in the limestone under the pyramids.
There is untouched archaeology down there, as well as a delicate ecosystem that includes colonies of bats and a species of spider which we've tentatively identified as the White Widow.
Collins said. The researcher didn't discover his find by chance and didn't stumble into it blindly. His research was inspired by the memoirs of the British Consul General Henry Salt. In his work, the diplomat told how he and the Italian explorer Giovanni Caviglia explored the underground system of the catacombs in Giza in 1817. The document says that Salt and Caviglia were exploring the caves at a distance of several hundred yards when they came across 4 large rooms that led to further cave passages. With the support of British Egyptologist Nigel Skinner Simpson, Collins reconstructed Salt's exploration of the plateau. Imagine his astonishment when he did eventually discover the entrance to the lost catacombs in an apparently unknown tomb west of the Great Pyramid. Indeed, the tomb had a crack in the rock that led into a massive natural cave.
We explored the caves before the air became too thin to continue. They're highly dangerous, with unseen pits and hollows, colonies of bats and venomous spiders.
Collins said. Unfortunately, the researcher didn't provide clear evidence, perhaps because of scrutiny reasons. But other Egyptologists drew attention to the lack of specific facts, criticizing Collins' findings. Collins suggested that natural caves, which are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years old, could have inspired ancient Egyptians not only to develop the pyramids, but also their very belief in the underworld. Indeed, Giza was known in antiquity as Rostau, which means mouth of the passages, and it is believed that these passages led to the mysterious space underneath.
The mouth of the passages is unquestionably a reference to the entrance to a subterranean cave world, one long rumored to exist beneath the plateau.
Collins told Discovery News. Quite expectedly, Collins' statement caused a slight stir, skepticism, and even indignation in the Egyptological community. Zahi Hawass, head of Egypt's High Council of Antiquities, flatly denied the discovery.
There are no new discoveries to be made at Giza. We know everything about the plateau,
he said. But Collins noted that after extensive research, he found no modern mention of caves.
To the best of our knowledge, nothing has ever been written or recorded about these caves since Salt's explorations. If Hawass does have any report related to these caves, we have yet to see it,
Collins said. However, then the topic received little publicity and attention, and everyone quickly forgot about it. Almost everyone. Of course, some enthusiasts continued their research and had to face some challenges along the way. And not only because getting permission to access the non-tourist part of the pyramids in Giza is not an easy task. So, 8 years after Collins' recount,
I love Envato Elements because it allows me to create better
Last night, Sniper Wolf, a massive YouTuber, showed up outside of our home, recorded a video of our home, and then posted it to her 5.6 million Instagram followers, goading me with the line, "Let's talk like adults." In my 17 years on YouTube, I've never once had someone come to my home and vaguely threaten me. Sniper Wolf needs to be deplatformed. In this exact moment, she turned from a mere content thief to someone who doxes and stalks her critics. To everyone that's reached out to us, thank you. We're fine, we're just a little shaken up. Mainly, we feel violated. We no longer feel safe in our own home because we're dealing with someone who genuinely thinks they're in the right for A, stalking me, and B, posting our home to her massive audience. What a disgusting abuse of clout that is. This is irresponsible at best and flat out dangerous at worst. YouTube needs to step in and take action. If this goes unpunished, then it sets a terrifying precedent that you can dox and stalk critics so long as you have a big YouTube audience. If she truly wanted to talk with me, she could have done so through many other means. But there's one thing you don't do. You do not show up at someone's house. That's simply a line you do not cross. There is zero justification for this. She claims in her story that I've been harassing her. No, Sniper Wolf, I've not been harassing you at all. In my videos on Ginger Jack's films, I've been critiquing her non-transformative commentary. I point out cases of content theft and freebooting, and I credit the creators she steals from. I've been critical of her content, but that does not equate to harassment. What is harassment is coming to our home, sharing it for millions to see, and taunting to come out. YouTube needs to take swift action and ban her from the platform ASAP. And the same goes for Instagram. Speaking of, Sniper Wolf is already making light of the situation, as if stalking someone is a quirky thing to do. No one should feel unsafe in their own home. And thanks to Sniper Wolf, my wife and I now do. So you two,
For the alliance
please do the
above
right
all.
thing and get her off the platform. Anyone who weaponizes their fan base like she did does not deserve a space here.
I went through some of the most bizarre TV shows ever and put them all into an iceberg chart, with the most commonly known ones at the top, and the farther down we go on the iceberg, the more obscure and strange things get. Let's dive in. £1 million in cash was burned to dust by art duo The K Foundation, who withdrew £1 million of their own money in 1994, flew it to the back of an abandoned boathouse in Scotland, and set it all ablaze. Are you wondering why? You should be. The stacks of £50 notes took over an hour to burn, and after the deed was done, the art duo filled a briefcase with the ashes to sell to art exhibitions, but no one wanted it. And those ashes were the only evidence of what they did.
Ten seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let the battle begin.
The familiar scent. cycle of being. A worthwhile pursuit. As the balance please.
Get out of there! Select a talent. Is in order. Ever onward.
Danger closes.
The choice is simple. Time for a short reprieve. Protect our ally! The journey begins. Protect our ally at all costs.
Honorable kill.
A minor triumph, but an important one. Ah, the familiar scent of death. You will be made silent. Thank you, healer. A minor triumph, but an important one.
Shall we see who gathers enough tribute this time? sentinel.
I am on my way. Choose a talent.
Thank you. Here.
You have been slain.
Death. I am the master of death.
Our ally needs help.
Ever onward. I grow tired of your petty squabbling. Gather tribute. Earn my favor. I will be right there. We have done well here. Well done. Your enemies shall be weakened. Let them fall before you.
Defend this fort.
As you say.
Enemy fort obliterated. Your enemy's fort crumbles. Select a talent.
I am on my way.
Celebration is in order.
Their fort falls like cherry blossoms.
I shall join you shortly.
Familiar sight.
And so the curse ends.
Yes.
My way. We conquer.
Safely There's more to do, it seems. A worthwhile pursuit.
Here is where we make our stand.
I will be right there. Do not fear death. I suppose I will see the devil's attributes this time.
You are at your limit. Retreat now.
This creature. Healing magic. We have done well here.
Use a talent.
Now that I shall savor. The balance will be preserved. Dragoon's blade whispers your name. We should make our defense here. Gather tribute or face my curse. The choice is simple. So be it. Thank you, healer. Into the black.
Masterful.
The familiar sound. Death. Exquisitely.
Do not let that happen again.
I grow tired of your petty squabbling. Gather tribute. Earn my favor.
I require aid.
So that's what death feels like. I miss it already. Ever onward. Do not fear death.
We shall kill them together.
Pick a talent.
My favor is yours, heroes. Your enemies shall fall.
Retreat!
Recruiting these mercenaries would be wise.
There is more to do.
Return to base at once.
I sense death within this place. As the balance decrees. Enough! The curse is over.
Keep him going. We should recruit these mercenaries.
That should help us.
A worthwhile pursuit.
I shall join you shortly.
Thank you, healer. I will be right there. So be it.
We should recruit these mercenaries.
Shall we see who gathers enough tribute this time?
Honorable kill. Double kill. Consider your flame.
And now, I make my exit.
I shall be there shortly.
So be it. We have done well here. Do not fear death. Gather tribute or face my gods. The choice is simple.
The keeper was destined
A minor trial, but an important one.
But useful.
I see you have some skill. My double kill.
But useful.
Victory.
MVP.
Would you like to learn a language? Have you ever dreamed of traveling to exotic lands and understanding everything that's said around you like some kind of secret agent? Have you ever thought about all the hundreds of potential friends around the world that you never made because you don't understand their language? And in fact, have you ever thought that maybe, just maybe, the love of your life is waiting somewhere in another country, but that person doesn't speak your language? Well, it's time to change that. It's time to make you bilingual, or trilingual, or sextilingual. I think that's how you say somebody who speaks 6 languages. But anyway, in this video, I'm finally going to tell you the steps that I use to learn any language. These are the steps that I've used to learn 15 different languages to varying degrees of fluency. And now, I may not be anyone of importance. And if we're being honest, I probably look like someone you shouldn't trust. But if there's one thing I really do know how to do, it's learn a language. And you can trust me on that. And I don't have anything to sell you or any BS like that. All you gotta do is just watch this video until the very end. And if you do that, you'll have all the tools you need to learn a language in the fastest and the best way possible. So let's get started. Yalla habibi, duende. So to get started, you gotta pick a language. And that should be easy. I'm sure you've thought about this before. It's the language that they speak and wherever you'd like to travel to or live in. Or maybe it's the language of the culture that you really like and would like to know more about. If you're wondering, by the way, how long it will take to get to fluency in the language that you want to learn, fluency just means feeling comfortable in the language with most situations. There's a helpful list you can look up by the Foreign Service Institute of the United States. Can't remember the link off the top of my head, but I will later, and I'll put it somewhere here on the screen. This list will tell you exactly how long it takes to get to fluency in a given language. And now, as you can see, some languages take quite a bit more time than others. So for example, if you're a native English speaker, Spanish will take you 600 hours to get to fluency. Same thing for French, for Dutch. I'm not really sure why you'd learn Dutch. I mean, who does that? But if you want to learn it, there you go. But if you get a little further away from Europe, geographically speaking, all of a sudden, the amount of hours needed to learn a language to fluency starts going up a bit. For example, if you want to learn Indonesian, all of a sudden you're looking at 2,000 hours. Same thing for Russian, same thing for Swahili. And then for certain languages, like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Arabic, those 4 languages have something that kind of steps up the difficulty level. Just something specific about each one. And so you get 3,000 hours. 3,000 hours to get to fluency. You might hear that, and I feel like you might get discouraged. But don't worry. Most of that time, most of those hours is going to be spent on talking to people. And trust me, that's a lot of fun. Tell me that I already completed the course, but I just walked in here. Sans point. Gotta fix your signage. Alright, so you've picked out your language and you're ready to get started. So what would I do if I was just starting off, learning a brand new language? Let me tell you. So I have good news. We're living in the golden age of language learning. Seriously. All the best language programs are basically free to use. Literally free to use, most of the time. I mean, you probably pay a little extra, get some extra services and stuff like that. But if you want to learn a language, money is no longer a barrier to getting started. And if you go back just 20 years ago, the situation was very different. It would be a lot harder, a lot more confusing, and especially a lot more expensive to learn a language. So congratulations, you got it good. So starting off, the most important thing to do is learn the key vocabulary. We're talking something like 200 to 500 words. And you also want to learn key grammar points. You don't have to go crazy with the grammar, but you need to learn enough so that you can understand how the language works. You can understand what people are saying to you.
Teachers want to play. The crusade calls.
I'm a full-time CTO without knowing how to code.
I, the founder myself, built the company over the last couple years. I had no engineers, no technical co-founders.
Bubble can do it all. I don't need a co-founder. I can see if I can do this myself, and Bubble provided me the opportunity.
For me, Bubble has really changed the entire trajectory of my life.
Technology, computers, and coding are an extremely valuable industry. And I know that if you have a foundation in coding, there's a place for you at almost any company. My name is Grant Gutschow. I'm an active duty military officer, and Codecademy has helped me grow my technical skills and offer me limitless potential for future careers that I may have. Codecademy is completely browser-based, and it doesn't require any extra software or downloads to use. You can access it from anywhere. You know that everything you need is right there, and there's never going to be any software issues while you're using it.
So what you want to do is you want to find a resource that teaches you both the vocabulary and the grammar at the same time. And in my experience, the best thing for this are actually these free language learning apps that you find on your phone. Now, I'm sure you've heard of some of these. They're pretty ubiquitous. But like Duolingo, Memrise, Busuu, Babbel. I don't think Babbel's free, but whatever. You can use these, and they're very helpful. And the thing that makes them so good is that they're gamified, right? They've been turned into a game. So you like earn points every time you finish a lesson, stuff like that. When you're learning a language on your own, it's a little bit harder to stay focused. right? We don't have a teacher yelling at us to hand in our homework. Yeah. So these apps are good because they give you a starting line and then a finish line. And you know, if you get to that finishing line, you won't be fluent in the language yet, but you will know the basic vocabulary and grammar. And that's really all the foundation that you need to keep going. Look at the bunny. Look at the bunny. Look at the bunny. The bunny clearly doesn't want to learn a language and be an OG like us. Let's carry on. So all you gotta do is finish these lessons on the app. But don't just do them once. Do them multiple times. 2, 3, 5 times. Repeat them. Because the more you repeat the lesson, the more you repeat learning a word or a grammar point, the more it sticks in your head. The more the neurons start firing, the synapses strengthen, all that fancy stuff. For some extra help though, with remembering words and sentences, what I'd recommend, and what I actually do, is I take notes. I note down words, I note down sentences, and you can actually just do this in like the notes function of your phone. Every single cell phone has one. You just write the foreign word, and then write the translation either below it or somewhere else in the same file. What you can do, you can just give yourself pop quizzes every once in a while. Or just use it for review. Or if you've forgotten a word, you need it on the spot, and you don't have Wi-Fi or something like that, you just go into your notes. If you have to, use the search function, and then boom, you got it. Now, if you'd like to learn a language, one of the real tools, you can use an app called Anki. Anki is literally a flashcard app. It's an app that helps you build flashcards. You put the word on one side, then you put the translation on the other, and then if you have enough cards, the app just helps you to shuffle the deck. And what's good about that app is, number one, it's free, completely, and it will show you the word that you need to learn at just the right amount of time. There is actually a science to how long you should wait before reviewing a word in order to remember it most effectively. Anki takes care of that for you. You don't have to try and stress. Have I waited a day? Have I waited a week to review this word? To be honest, I don't use that app all the time, but I have in the past, and it's very helpful. So, yet another tool for you to use. So that's all you need. And I'm going to make a bold statement here and say that if you're just learning the basic vocabulary and grammar, it's actually better if you just learn that on your own, honestly. Because you could get a teacher if you really need a helping hand, but you know, you're going to end up paying like $10, $20 just to learn something that you can get from one of these apps. So, you know, use the apps, take some notes, and just study something like 15, 30 minutes a day. Maybe an hour, or even 3 hours, if you want to go really crazy. But to be honest, that's all you need. As little as 15 minutes a day, and you'll make progress in whatever language you're trying to learn. Hey, I know we're all busy. Whoa, hold up. What about pronunciation? I've heard that's important. How about that, Tommy? For some of you watching this video right now, I agree, pronunciation is important. And if for some reason you want to sound like a native speaker, then the first thing you should do is focus on pronunciation. Master that before you even learn your first word. But to be honest, I don't think you should do it. Don't stress about it. What I usually do now is I start learning the language, learning the words, the vocab, the grammar, and if I encounter a sound that's foreign to me, that I've never heard before, I'll go and Google it and try to find out more about the sound. The only exception to this, for me, is when it's a tonal language, like Chinese.
As you say.
Because in that case, the pronunciation is pretty important. And if you don't nail it, people are not going to understand what you're saying. Mandarin, Cantonese, Thai, if you say the wrong tone, you're literally saying a different word. You can imagine how that would get confusing. So, yeah. Spend some extra time learning the tone. If you're going for the Asian language. Or the West African language. A lot of African languages are tonal as well.
Be careful. We have done well here.
Alright, so you finished the basic course in the language, you're feeling comfortable with the grammar and the basic vocab. What do you do now? Well, at least for me, this is where the fun part begins. This is where we get to step 3. It's time to talk to people, real people. But the only problem is, real people real human beings tend to be kind of busy. And they don't have the time to just become on-the-spot language teachers for you whenever you need them. So you have a few options. One is to find an actual teacher to talk to. And in this case, I would actually say getting a teacher is necessary, if you can. Afford it. Teacher, so number one, fix all your mistakes. Gladly do it. A regular person will feel weird about telling you when you made a mistake. They don't want to be rude. But a teacher, of course, will pay them to tell you about all your mistakes. Let them have at it. They'll tell you every mistake that you make. That's how you get better. The goal of these lessons with the teacher should be to get used to how a real conversation will be like in that language. You know, the intonation, the mannerisms, the slang, all that stuff. Because, you know, learning to speak a language is just like learning to dive, learning an instrument. The more hours you put in, the more you practice it, the better you get. Shocking, I know. Nowadays, you can easily find a language teacher online for a one-on-one level. It's probably not as expensive as you think it is. You go to a website like Kotaku or Verbling, pay something like $10 or less, and you'll get a language lesson for 30 minutes to an hour. Now, what if you can't afford a language teacher, but you still want to talk to native speakers? That's fine. I'm busy. Thankfully, you have other options. You have 3 options. One example, a language exchange app. Go on there, find random people, instantly chat with in whatever language you try to learn. The only problem is, some languages have way more speakers on there than others, and also the people that you talk to on there may not always respond regularly. They may just disappear. But it's still a pretty good tool, and you can politely ask them to help you out. Now, I've heard these apps can be a little more annoying to use if you're a woman, because, surprise, surprise, dudes from around the world will use this as an excuse to hit on you. But, I don't know. You can solve that problem by just talking to other women.
The Xianzhou has met with countless trials. The darkening mist shrouds the radiant moon. Bound by blindness, one is cast into Mara with a sharp blade, yet still powerless against the demons. With this blade as my core, neither self is blade fodder. Tried to cleanse it. Remnants of the past return with the snow. Powerless. Unable to mend past animosities. Feel their power. Come to me. All will be revealed. My blade to the very end, until the stars have been cut down from the sky. This oath I will never forsake.
A worthwhile pursuit.
So you have an idea. You want to start a business, and you think you need the capital of that inheritance. You loan, or best case, you come to an investor like me, and I take half your company. But the truth is, if we made a deal, here's what I would do. I'd build you a funnel. So you can give me a piece of your company and have us do it, or you can take the Your First Funnel Challenge and do it yourself. In this 5-day challenge, you'll hear how 20 self-made entrepreneurs started with nothing and went on to build massively successful businesses, all by using the same process that you can learn for free. Because it costs a whopping $0 to attend. Click the link now and let's turn that idea into an empire.
Finally, another option is you can check if you have language meetups or language events in your city. Now, a language event is an event where you go to it, you say what language you're learning, and ideally what will happen is you'll find somebody else who's learning your language, and you can just take turns.
You have just lost.
If there's alcohol involved, it's even better. You might think that was a joke, but I'm being 100% serious. Because one of the biggest hurdles when it comes to learning a language is just how self-conscious we are. You know, we think about making mistakes, how we sound stupid, how we sound unnatural compared to our native language, and you just gotta forget about all that. You gotta get over it. Granted, this is easier said than done, so hence alcohol helps. And if you can find a language event in your city, as I said, they can be very helpful. Most cities have these. I think the pandemic may have killed off a lot of them, but they're slowly coming back. And if you're ever in Asia, let me know, because in my previous life, I may have organized a few of these events myself.
Metal spiders.
Alright, fourth and final step is immersion. Go to the place that speaks your language and immerse yourself. That's what I'm off to do right now. Oh hey, I was originally going to film the next part in the airport. I made it stressful. I ran out of time. Don't procrastinate if you're learning a language. Or whatever.
The balance.
Important. As I said, the last thing is immersion. What I mean by immersion is go into a country where the speaking language is learning. Staying there for a week, several weeks, a month, or even longer in order to learn it.
Do not let that happen again.
Once you've got the basics down, there's nothing better you can do. Go to a country, surround yourself by native speakers. Teachers, language exchange partners, language events, they're all very good for them themselves, but they still can't compare to actually being in the country. Because it's a whole different experience entirely. When you're in the country, you're surrounded by people that are on-the-spot interactions. You don't even have time to think. You start speaking, and you have to adapt. You start settling into a new kind of routine. And this is how you really train your brain to speak the language. But of course, once you get to the country, you gotta make the effort yourself to speak the language. Don't fall back on English. Don't fall back into gesticulation to communicate with people. You gotta try and speak the language. Every time. Don't worry about making mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes. I 100% guarantee it. I make so many mistakes. But that's how you learn. You get corrected. Or at least you pay attention and learn when you're making mistakes. You pay attention to the way people are buying things, the way they greet each other, and you can copy what they're saying. Because that's probably the natural, common way of doing it. Another really useful thing you can do is learn how to say, how do I say this in that language? In Spanish, Portuguese, in Chinese, you can go around with the key. Say, how do I say this? Right? ¿Cómo se dice esto? And they tell you that's a mesa, or duote, or whatever. It's as simple as that, really. And something very important to keep in mind is don't try to sound perfect. Don't try to sound the way you do in your native language. It's going to be way too difficult to do that. Instead, what you should do is just try to simplify what you're trying to say. And you realize it's a lot easier than you think it is. As long as you can express yourself and be understood, that's all that matters. You can worry about being the comedian that you are in your native language later.
There's more to do, it seems.
And that is basically all I do. That's all it is. Use these apps, basics of the language, and then eventually I walk conversation practice, find a teacher, get conversation partners, and then get to the country and I just try to talk to everyone. Keep using the language. That's try to avoid English if I can. Ultimately, it's up to you what level you want to learn the language. For example, maybe you're just planning a short stay in a country to speak the language that you're learning. Maybe you just need the language to do business. If that's the case, you don't have to go that far.
Your keep fell
more
to
like
the
an intermediate
enemy's
fluency, and
siege.
you're good. On the other hand, if you really like the culture of the country, or if you're trying to live in a country long term, like the husband is from that country, then it might be beneficial for you to learn the language a bit more, take it to a higher level. I'll tell you a secret that none of these language gurus on YouTube are going to tell you, which is that there is no defined level for when you actually speak the language. You know? That is to say, it's all very ambiguous. No one say
MVP.
Technically, you can just have basic conversations in a language. You could say that you speak that language. I'm going to use myself as an example for this, so I don't have to throw shade at anybody else.